Hello, I'm pleased to introduce Imelda Bates, the founder of HR Agent, an esteemed HR consulting firm established in 2007 and based in Houston, Texas. Hello, Imelda.
Hi, Eric. It's really good to see you. You and I have been working together for a decade and a half.
Yeah, I think 2011. Yeah.
Oh, it's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah, I know. Time
Good to
goes
see you.
by. Likewise. So Imelda, you recently wrote an article, which we posted on your LinkedIn profile recently, titled "Performance Reviews Are Dead. What Comes Next?" So today, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about in more depth what that means. What does it mean? Performance reviews are dead, and so let's get started. Let's get started with that. So to get us going, you argue that performance reviews are dead. What was the pivotal moment in your consulting career that first made you realize traditional performance management was fundamentally broken?
Well, that's such a great question. So I learned it about mid-career when a company that I worked for, they had been doing reviews and the best I'd ever seen, right? It was a simple one-page document that had 3, 4, maybe 5 questions, and they seemed to really hit the nuances of the roles that they were, that the questions were derived to address. And then it got complicated. They brought in a system, and then it was peer reviews and self-reviews, and it just got really complicated. And what I learned was that the metric, what they were actually trying to measure, got lost, just completely lost. And I don't know why. I think just as they got bigger, it became how can we do this better? And they wanted to use technology, and I do appreciate technology, as you know. But the question comes in, but are we getting what we need to get from this? And the answer was absolutely not. And then once I started this business, I saw that wasn't unique to that company. That's happening everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like they're doing it by rote, as opposed to doing it to glean meaningful information, or they use it as an opportunity to chastise. Versus an opportunity to inspire.
Interesting. Yeah. Within the article, you also suggest performance is about understanding human potential. Can you share a specific example that illustrates that?
Human potential. Yeah. Oftentimes when you hire someone, you're thinking about the role that needs to be filled. And so companies often hire good enough. Just whoever was good enough, right? Oh, all these candidates were bad. This is the best of the bunch. I'll just take them. Not realizing that what you're inviting a new member into your work family, right? So that person is going to have a seat at the table, and they're going to have thoughts, ideas, feelings, frustrations, and you're going to have to deal with that, right? So it's like humans, you're hiring the whole human, not just the resume. So ask the questions you really want to know. What would you ask someone if they were interviewing to be a new family member, right? Somebody's marrying your brother or your sister. You got questions like,
right.
What are your intentions? So I want to know, what are your intentions? You're coming in here, an organization that right now we have no issues. What are you going to bring to that? How are you going to make us better? Right. And there is no dumb question. And oftentimes people get caught up on asking the right questions. They've got their list of questions. And yes, go into the meeting prepared, but ask what occurs to you, and let them ask what occurs to them, right? And one of the things that and you got to be careful, because the Department of Labor, they have rules, like don't ask them their age, okay, fine. But you can ask other questions like, okay, so, what was college like? After you graduated, what did you do? That's going to start giving you a timeline, if that's what you want to know. Right. So yeah, I would say understanding the human, the potential of that human will become evident in conversation. but connect in that conversation, get to know them.
Yeah, a human conversation rather than a Q&A.
Exactly.
Q&A based around more about the function of the job.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the function is important, but
Yeah.
it's equally important to understand the human who's coming in to perform that function.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Great. We're going to shift gears a little bit, talk more about the methodology around your unique approach.
Okay.
And so when you talk about creating in the article, you mentioned a space for genuine dialogue. So when you talk about creating this space of genuine dialogue, what specific facilitation techniques have you found most effective in transforming workplace dynamic?
Ooh. Businesses come with their own set of intrinsic, dynamics. Because whoever sat down and came up with the idea to start the business and then the business grew, they had a plan in mind, goals in mind, a mission, so to speak. And, what gets lost in that is those things aren't being done by people with no feelings, right? Those jobs are being done by real humans with real thoughts. And often those very humans will inspire new thoughts in you as a manager, as an executive. And it's often forgotten that there's always room for inspiration. There's always room for growth. There's always room for new understanding. It gets lost so often. And a 5-minute conversation with someone, passing them in the hall, can go a really long way. It gets lost.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. I think you're alluding to something else from your article. I think we'll probably get to that later on in this discussion, but just to continue on with the some of the methodology, how do organizations practically transition from metric driven to more of a human centered performance approach without losing accountability?
That's a good point. And I would never suggest that any of my clients shift away from metrics, right? You need to know what is the goal, right? But in a goal, there are milestones, and you're not going to always be able to color those in a box, right? So understanding what is the goal? What's the mission? What are we trying to accomplish as a company? And bring everybody under the tent for that, right? Don't make it, okay, managers, this is what we're trying to do. And then you don't really tell anybody and you hope that the managers are going to convey it. No, have a town hall, call it whatever you want, but have a town hall, have that discussion so that everybody is clear and nobody can say what they didn't know. And let them hear it from you, whoever you may be, right? It could be whoever's designated to give that information. Say it and make sure and open the floor for questions. I had a previous employer who did it better than I'd ever seen. They'd have these town halls. It would last for about a day and a half, which seems like a long time. But he knew that he had to invest in the person. And he would invite some of the most incredible people to come and speak. And it would never be what you think, right? So you're having this town hall and it's a very serious company and everybody's, dressed, the part and they're sitting. And someone comes in and he talks about working in living in the jungle for a month. And then he's showing you pictures of how a pride of lions will move and how they hunt and how they protect each other and how they trust each other. And I'm going to say, and as silly as it sounds, that was one of the most profound moments for me because I thought to myself, if I really trusted the person sitting next to me, I wouldn't worry about what they're saying behind my back, or I wouldn't worry about, does my manager really like me? And I wouldn't worry about it because I know that we're all going to the same end. My paycheck is contingent upon my contribution to this entire goal.
Right.
Right. And as an employee, we can forget that. Right. Well, I did this and I did that. Well, but did it get us to our goal? Right. Yeah, it was a nice thing to do, but did it help the company? And then you have managers who say, and they're in the middle because they've got senior management coming down on them, everybody under them frustrated because they're not being treated however they feel they should be. And it gets really convoluted. It really, really does. But when you get people together and you inspire them, they will learn to trust each other. And when you help them resolve conflict without losing sight of the fact that their feelings are valid, it goes a long way. It
Right.
really does.
Yeah. And the human potential translates through the to the more the performance around accountability and whatnot. You see
Because
that?
potential has to be realized, otherwise
Right.
it has no value,
Right.
right?
Right. Right. Yeah.
So you got to measure it in some way. But part of
Yeah.
that measurement is not just did they accomplish A, B, and C? What other things did they do along the way to
Mhm.
help others accomplish their goals as well? I mean,
Also,
there's
yeah.
so many ways to measure a person
Yeah.
and their
Absolutely.
contributions.
Absolutely. Great. So let's transition to psychological
Ah,
insights. Yes. Which I know you have a steep background in, that you bring to your work. You mentioned conflict between two professionals. So I'm going back to the article.
yeah.
You mentioned conflict between two professionals that was resolved through understanding. What psychological principles underpin successful? I guess in your opinion, what psychological principles underpin successful workplace conflict resolution?
I'll answer the question first, and then I'll go into the experience. What underpins successful conflict resolution? Patience and compassion. Even if you can't empathize with what they're talking about, maybe you think it's the silliest thing in the world. Patience and compassion
Mm,
required. Absolutely. There's no way around that. Um, but the instance, there was an experience where I got a call on a weekend, and someone was very upset, and they were telling me what happened, and apparently it had festered like over that Friday and Saturday. So now they're calling me and they're like, I can't look at this person on Monday, and I'm like, okay, what happened? And they told me what happened, and something about it just didn't sound complete to me. So I said, okay, do you mind if I sit with both of you and just have a conversation? And he was like, that's fine, but I really don't want to be in the room with him. I said, okay, just let's just have a conversation. So I called the other gentleman who was an executive in the company. One was lower, clerk-ish role, administrator type role, and the other one was, more executive. But they had a friendship, and it just got off track. And so we sat in a room, and I listened, and I started to see the pain. And I'm not trying to turn everybody into therapists just because that's my passion, but um, I saw the pain, and I'm like, if I can get each of them to feel each other's feelings a little bit, they'll understand. It took maybe 20 minutes before everybody was apologizing over each other because it
mm,
was a true misunderstanding. But most businesses, they just want the business to occur, and they
right.
don't really want to deal with the people aspect, which is why I have a job, right? Because I will deal with that for you. And it wasn't
Mm,
disruptive to the business. Nobody even knew the conversation had happened. All they knew were these two guys who had been friends for a long time were basically hugging it out on the way out the door.
right.
It worked.
What does the alternative of that look like? If you had taken more of a traditional approach to that particular scenario, how would that contrast?
Oh, tremendously. I've seen it where executives say, grow up, or they send them off to some boot campish type thing, or they just try to gloss over it with a team building exercise. Although I am
Mm,
a huge fan of team building, um, some issues require a little bit more delicate handling and more directly,
mhm.
right?
Right.
So,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know from our other conversations that a potential outcome of that situation not handled correctly. In fact, in the previous question that we had, it translates potentially into uh, those metrics, those metrics we talked about about accountability being severely impacted by the employee that's just not happy, right? And so that's the risk.
Yeah, that is absolutely the risk, because an
Yeah.
unhappy employee comes in and they spread their unhappiness
Mhm.
inadvertently, but they spread
Mhm.
it.
Right. Right. Okay. Staying with the psychological questions. So, in your experience, what are the most common systemic pressures that prevent genuine human connection in professional environments?
Oh, wow. At a lower level in the organization, grudges. Um, at the higher level of organization, people feeling like they've been passed over and not seen for the value that they provide. So speaking of grudges, you'll have, administrators, administrative professionals, paralegals, um, medical assistants, all the staff that we see, and they'll be frustrated about something. And rather than going to someone to help them work through it because they don't trust that anybody either cares enough to or want to, they will just hold a grudge. They'll get quiet and hold a grudge. And now you've got this tension and nobody knows why. And then you got people choosing sides based on whatever bits and pieces of the disgruntlement they know of. And now you've got this us and them, and it just starts to just degrade
Mm,
inside of an organization. It starts to degrade the culture. And companies,
mm,
they don't even see it coming. And all of a sudden they just know that these people don't like each other. That happened to me back in the early 2000s. That happened. And, it's like all these people that just don't like each other, and they're just, and then this person is feeling insecure. It was a manager feeling insecure, and they were just like trying to pit people against others to feel better.
mm,
That happens more than you know. But the reason that I have a job, and I tell my staff this, the reason we have jobs is because we make light work of that, right?
mm,
So if you're not getting along and you don't like, and you this is a safe space, and it can feel like, oh my God, they're in HR again, they're in there again, they're talking again. But if you come and you talk to me, or call me at night, even after work on your way home, get it out. So when you get home, your family gets a better version of you. When you come back to work, your teammates get a better version of you.
mm,
And it's
mhm,
critical. It's critical.
mm.
Yeah.
So, looking a little bit more into the future around these topics that we're discussing around performance management, um, beyond eliminating traditional performance reviews, what alternative frameworks are you seeing emerge in some of the more progressive organizations?
Oh, that's such a great question. Some of my clients have made traditional performance reviews work because they take the time to build the questions for the person. You're not going to ask a receptionist the same question you're going to ask a director. You're just not. So understanding that punctuality could mean a whole lot for her, for the junior staffer, because they're responsible for being the face of the organization. When someone walks in, you want someone there to greet. You don't want phone calls not answered. Timeliness is important, but help them understand why timeliness is important.
Mm,
Then you have executives who, I don't care if you're 10 minutes late, you probably worked until midnight, right? So I'm not asking you the same questions I'm asking them. So if you're going to go the traditional route, ask the right questions, set the right metrics, the right milestones, the right goals. You have to do it. Alternative to that, and it takes a lot of time, by the way. The bigger the organization, the more departments, the more questions, and you got to get specific.
right.
And using
Right.
canned questions never work. So if you don't want to go that route, what I suggest is this. Instead of waiting till the end of the year and trying to have a conversation with 200, 300, 600, 1,300 employees and getting these reviews back, try this. Try checking in with them once a month. Just set a once a month meeting for 30 minutes. Listen, make notes. What are you working on? Really? How'd that go? Hear their perspective of how it went, because not only can you measure the outcome, because you're going to measure the outcome anyway, right? You're going to see the result, but you can also see, does their train of thought support them in this role, right? Do they need coaching in a direction?
Mm, mhm,
Or is there another role within the company that they'd be really good at, but they don't even know exists? It's those little things that make a huge, huge difference.
Right.
So, and by the way, it takes actually less time if you're doing a 30-minute meeting once a month than it does to try to create all these questions and sit and interview all these people, because it's more
Yeah, I
natural.
see a lot of benefit from that. I think the employee also will just feel heard and seen, and there's a lot of what we discussed earlier comes out through that process as well. And I think it's what I'm noticing is a little bit of a theme of uh, it's generally the more simple approach is the best approach to a lot of these situations.
Simple
Right?
and direct.
Yeah, you would say if a family member felt like you weren't in touch with them often enough, and you set a similar goal, check in with them 30 minutes a month, right? That can translate into the workplace. Yeah.
Yeah, you and I have talked about that before, where it's, it's like you hire someone into your company because you have a role that desperately needs to be filled. You want to know who they are, right? Because you want to make sure that not only are they a good fit for you, you're a good fit for them.
Mm-hmm.
So we can have a good relationship, not just I pay you, come in here and do this job, shut up, be quiet,
Right.
get it done.
Right.
That doesn't work, right?
Yeah, not anymore.
It's
Not anymore.
I want
Yeah.
I have to kind of like you, and you got to kind of like me. And if we can't develop that, that's not to say we won't have bad days. That's not to say that, because in every family, whether it's a business relationship or a personal relationship, there's going to be some conflict on occasion. But what we don't want is conflict that festers with people who don't feel like they can talk to each other because they don't understand each other.
Mm.
And they don't
Mhm.
even really want to.
Yeah, that closing up, that tightness you mentioned earlier, that's a dangerous thing for an organization. Yeah. So we're going to switch gears a little bit, go
Where we going?
some more personal philosophy type questions.
Okay.
Again, this is all based on what I pulled from some curiosity I had from your article.
Okay.
So your approach seems to blend organizational strategy with an almost anthropological observation. How did you go about developing that unique perspective?
You know, I had an opportunity. I'm gonna say I don't want to date myself here, but when I was much younger, I had taken a job at a Ramco services company. That was my first professional job, and I remember the feeling I got even when I came back, because I did an internship my first year, and then I came back. They invited me back a second year. And that second year in particular, I remember the feeling was the exact same on day one, because their HR department was unlike anything at that point, I had ever seen. But even now, I almost modeled my own business after it. It was done so well. You walk into reception, it was a wide open space, regardless of the size of the room, although it was huge. The size of the room, it was the space, it was how it felt. The receptionist greeted you. You could see she was happy. There was no faking that. You walk in and she's like, "Welcome to Aramco Services Company. How can I help you?" And you're like, "I feel welcome. Okay,
Mhm.
yeah, help me do something. I don't know what I want to do. Just help me."
Right.
And as I go to work and come in every day, she greeted you the same way every day. You go to your desk and your coworkers seem to just vibe. And during my second year, I learned why that was. At the time, the COO and the controller, Joe and Larry, they were so accessible. Joe Coleman was the most accessible human being. Larry Collier and his wife took me to lunch anytime I wanted to talk. She happened to also work there, a different department, but I liked her so much. So we'd
Yep.
go to lunch and we just talk. We would just talk. And it was like, "So what's on your mind?" "I'm an intern. Do you really care what's on my mind?" Yeah, they did. And it wasn't just me. They would bring in, I don't know, a dozen interns in the summer, and all of them had the same experience. And that's something that I want to bring to any of our clients. And I hope that I do bring. And that is, I have conversations with management. I have conversations with junior staff and everybody in between. And because I have no skin in the game, I don't work here, even though it feels like I work here. I can go back and tell the CEO something that you can't. Or maybe you're too afraid to, or you don't know how to frame it so he or she can hear it. And the same vice versa. Hey, do you understand that your CEO does these things? Not just hands out bonuses or hands out a paycheck, right? They actually have to guide this ship, and these are the things they have to do. So it's helping all parties understand each other, and that breeds tolerance, empathy, right? Those are the things that most HR people inside of an organization will struggle to do because they've got their metrics that they've got to meet. I just have a contract that I have to fulfill. And part of that contract is keeping the culture of this business really tight. Did I go off on a tangent? Because I do that because I love this so much.
No, it's good. A lot of that is, yeah, it's great. And I can see how that translates into the work that you do today, that experience you had as an intern. And I would imagine you've picked up things along the way with each new account, and it has over time shaped your methodology and what makes HR agent different.
Yeah, because we get that it's not just about payroll and benefits. We get it, right?
Yeah.
We get that if your culture breaks down, your benefits don't matter.
Right.
You can pay for benefits 100% and people don't want to come work here because the environment feels toxic. And by the way, let me just say, because I had this come up recently with an executive, they asked me a question. They said, we're having problems getting people to come work here. The first thing I did was I started scouring the internet. What are people saying about you? I called past employees who I had, because I have relationships with these people. And I asked, like, what made you leave?
Right.
And they're like, this. And you're like, really? And why didn't you say anything? And they were like, well, at the time I didn't think I could. I mean, I knew I could come and tell you, but I didn't think it would make a difference. And now the company is hearing it and they're like, oh crap, our culture's bad. No, your culture is abysmal.
Yeah.
Let's fix it, but it's fixable. You can't fix what you don't know. So if I'm telling you it's a problem, you know it's a problem, let's get to work. And if that means me working until 8, 9, 10, 11 o'clock at night to make sure it gets done because I'm taking this group over here for bowling and this group over here for karaoke and we're having conversations, then that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah. So let's switch to actually one other question on that. What would you say the most counterintuitive insight you've gained about human performance in organizations?
Whew. So much. It is counterintuitive for an employee. I'm thinking of some of my oil and gas clients. Let's say an employee welds beads for a living. They literally weld this little brad onto this piece of metal over and over all day long, right? Some people hear that and they think, oh, that's a great job. Some people hear that and they think, oh, it's a crap job. I would never want to do that job. But regardless, that's a human doing that job. And that human has a family. And that human has some ambitions that you may be unaware of. And those ambitions may not have anything to do with work, but they have some ambitions. Maybe that's to buy a house or buy a new car or whatever it may be. Stopping to say good morning and to say, hey, I see you. Thank you. Wow. That means more to them than money. Right. Not that they're going to work for free. So please don't take that from this, but they definitely understand, like they feel appreciated in a way that money is fee for services, right? Versus I appreciate you. Thank you. And remembering their name. Another thing I learned from Aramco Services, Zainal Al-Areza was the most senior person at the company. And one thing I can say about him, he knew everybody's name. Everybody's name. And a lot of my clients, the CEOs will know everybody's name, but not everybody else will learn everybody's name. And it's okay if you forget, but don't try to pretend you know their name. And you're like, oh, hey, you. No,
Yeah,
just,
yeah, yeah.
hey, remind
Yeah.
me of your name again. I'm so sorry. It slipped my mind.
Mm.
Okay, got you. And then remember, right?
Yeah,
So
that
thank you.
authenticity. Yeah.
Yeah, just authenticity and
Mhm.
just be honest
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and connect whenever possible, which is what thank you really is.
Mm. All right, I got a couple of tougher questions for you to wrap up today.
I'm
And
seated. Go for it.
so critics might say your approach is too soft.
Mm.
How would you respond to leaders who believe strict measurement drives performance?
Yeah, I've heard that. I've heard that before. And I'm usually easily able to shed light um, through experience. But the truth is, people are soft. They have a
Mm,
lot of soft skills that you won't ever see, and those soft skills is what makes you like one employee more than another.
mm,
People don't hire the best of the best. They often hire the person they like of the best, right? So if I don't like you, I am not hiring you. Won't do it.
mm,
Sorry, it's not going to happen. So oftentimes, what I tell people when they say, and I've heard, you know, this person's in your office all the time, or this person stops by too much, or whatever the case may be. Because I'm not at every client, it's other staff members, but I've heard that. And what I always say is, did you spring a leak today? Did anything happen to cause problems today? Well, no. You're welcome, right? Because
mm.
that's really what it
Right,
is. It's
right.
we're maintaining your company all day, every day. We're taking temperatures. We're making sure the culture supports the mission. Because a mission without a culture of people to get it done.
Yeah, it's just a statement. Yeah.
Correct.
And what about a CEO who's skeptical about dismantling their current performance management system? What single, or it doesn't have to be single argument, but like, what would your argument uh, be to convince them otherwise?
I would never tell a company or client to dismantle what works. But if it doesn't work, we've got to do something different. And maybe we don't take 10 steps in the opposite direction. Maybe we take two. But the truth is, and I never have this issue once I sit down with a CEO or COO or CFO for that matter, general counsel, and we all talk. And what usually comes out of it is a better understanding. Because here's the thing, I have no skin in the game. No matter what my answer is, my pay doesn't change, right?
Mm,
So I'm not here trying to win a bonus. I'm not here trying to get a promotion. I already have a job, right? I want you to understand what the dysfunction is in your company. And if you say, if an executive says to me, well, I don't care about that. I just want the bottom line. I say, okay, let's talk about what's broken then. Let's just focus purely on what you think is broken. And then they'll tell me that and we'll go from there. Sometimes they have great insights. Sometimes they don't quite know because they're not touching it. It's too far down the chain for them to
right, right.
see. And then I make them, aware, okay, well, did you know this was happening and that was happening? And oftentimes, this person's sick or, did you know? And they're like, I had no idea. And then they realize, I'll give you a really good example. We had a company that hired us and they were primarily focused in Midland, Texas. So I would go to Midland, every week, Tuesday to Thursday, every single week. And it was really an interesting experience because my job was to go down and fire everyone in the office. That's literally what they hired me for. And I said, well, let me go see what's going on first. Can you give me that? They said yes. And they kept most of those people. One girl they kept on, they gave her a retention bonus. Good. She was so good at what she did, but nobody saw her. They
Mm.
thought she was like the mail girl. And when I met her, first thing I did was I was like, what do you do? And she's like, oh, whatever anybody asks me to do. I said, what do you want to do? So she told me, and I said, well, let me ask you this. Have you ever done payroll before? And she's like, no. I said, let's go. That was her first day meeting me. We sat down and we did payroll. She knocked it out of the park. No errors. She did such a great job. And so 2 people were already leaving because they had resigned. And there were, I don't know, maybe 10 or 12 other people in the office. And I said, okay, let's figure this out. Now, their corporate office was out in West Houston. So I flew back to Houston and I sat down and I had a conversation with the executives and I explained what I saw. And they said, okay, turns out there was a person there who was deathly ill, literally. They had no idea. So they didn't know that they were about to put her out of work and she wouldn't be able to maintain her insurance. They didn't know that they had a person sitting in that office who could do payroll with her eyes closed, right? They didn't know that there was a girl there who was better at safety than they knew. And she picked up the mantle and she handled it. And all I did was pay attention, report back, encourage. And those ladies, they kept a job until the company sold. So what was going to be a termination turned into 2 additional years of employment.
Yeah, great example. Great example. What is there anything else that you'd like to share today? We've gone through the questions I had from reading your most recent article and the things I was curious about and wanted to learn more. Is there anything that we didn't cover or anything additional that you'd like to discuss today?
No, Eric, it's always a pleasure to sit and talk with you. And you and I could go on for hours, but that would make for a very long discussion. I don't know how we would get all that done, but no, I don't have anything else. Just, the only thing I would say to employers, slow down just long enough to understand, And if you can't do it, make sure that you have the right staff below you that can. If they need training, that's what we do. We help them gain that level of empathy. And there is no wasted effort when you have a group of people that enjoy working together, because they will take you beyond your mission every time.
Wonderful. That's a great spot to end it right there. I want to thank you again for your time. And
thank you.
And we will maybe see about doing more of these. This was fun.
Let's do it again. Yeah, let's do it again.
Well, thank you very much. And until next time, Imelda, we'll talk soon.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.